Problem with it, and this is something that feminists use a lot, kind of like the pay gap. They use a stat that they know really isn't accurate, and they know it's not something that would hold water when it comes to the court of arguments. It's a very small sample size. The pay gap doesn't. Come on, you know that. So this was a very small sample study, 2012.
We know that it's not going to hold water is just insulting and is just ridiculous.
It's slightly so. I'll give you that. It was slightly insulting.
It's a little condescending.
I'll give you that. It is, but statistically, it still is something.
In today's video, Maria Del Russo absolutely destroys Steven Crowder in a heated debate on feminism and transgenders. Crowder brought the usual MAGA takes, blaming feminism for unhappy women and declining families, but Maria shut it down with facts, logic, and real-world impact. From gender roles to economic freedom, she exposed just how outdated Crowder's views really are. So let's dive in and watch how Maria Del Russo shuts down Steven Crowder in this heated debate.
Put it this way, it is either startling that the feminist movement at large have never read from including female economists, or it's startling that they have and ignore it. It's one of the two. But the statistic is a statistic. It doesn't care about which group it's offending. It's just not accurate. Now, when it comes to this study, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was a 2012 study that used a very small sample size, and it looked at people specifically in entry-level jobs. Here's the thing. Feminists reached back to 2012 to take that study. But we have other studies, and we have meta-analyses. There was a 2015 study that looked at the same thing. I believe it used about 800-something applicants. And when it actually took into account people in different jobs, people, becoming tenured professors, the salary of a biology professor, it actually found that at higher levels of education, women in the STEM fields were much more likely to be accepted with the same parameters. This was a more comprehensive study. It included a larger sample size, and it's more recent. I don't know why all of the blogs and feminists on Twitter haven't been able to find a 2015 study, but it's more valid and substantial. And I think that's important. I'm not saying, I'm sure you weren't aware of it. I certainly am not attributing to any kind of malice what I think can be attributed to not knowing. But it is remarkable that a 2012 study is still used to prove that point.
Is that the study that you're talking about right now is specific to the STEM industry, to those types of jobs?
Yes, because I believe you sent me the 2012 study on that. That was what you tweeted me.
Okay.
So well, yes. Hold on. If you want, I can probably find it and bring it up pretty quickly.
No, I believe you. It's not I completely, sure, yeah. You don't have to look it up. I'm sure that it exists. I will happily look it up after you and I are.
I can send it to you, or we can put it kind of in the description. But yes, there was a 2015 study that included a much larger sample size. So so let's if we assume that I'm not lying, let's take that off the table. So now that's gone.
All right. So if you still want to talk about jobs, and you will probably tell me that it does not hold water because it's anecdotal. There have been multiple times that trans men have discussed their experiences with privilege once they have transitioned. So when they were presenting as female to when they were presenting as male. So once they started presenting as male, they would start experiencing privilege in their day-to-day lives here. A couple of pieces of privilege that they have experienced. I'm suddenly funny.
No, sorry, I didn't want to laugh because I didn't know if you were meant to. Okay, that's funny. A couple pieces of privilege. That's good.
No. The first point was I'm suddenly more funny. The trans man.
Oh, I thought you were saying it was a joke. A couple pieces of privilege.
No.
Okay.
That was pretty good though. That they're suddenly more funny. That they're taken more seriously. That they rarely get interrupted. That they get paid more. Clothing is more practical. They get more free passes. They're more likely to arrive home safely after walking alone at night. They don't have to worry about keeping an eye on their drink as often as they did when they were presenting as females. They're not told by strangers to smile. They don't have strangers giving uninvited opinions about their bodies as they pass by.
Steven Crowder tried once again to dismiss feminism as a fraudulent movement, zeroing in on the gender pay gap as some outdated myth. But Maria Del Russo wasn't having it, and honestly she brought way more than vibes to this debate. While Crowder nitpicked a 2012 pay gap study, Maria came back with something Crowder never seems to bring to these conversations: lived experience and actual systemic insight. Yes, some of the earliest pay gap studies were limited, but the broader body of research like the AAUW's ongoing analysis or the Pew Research Center's 2023 report still shows women earn around 82 cents to every dollar men do, even when accounting for education, experience, and job type. That's not anecdotal, that's data. Maria also nailed a powerful point that Crowder couldn't touch. Trans men who transitioned and started being perceived as male have consistently reported being treated better in the workplace and in society. More respect, fewer interruptions, more credibility. That's not some woke talking point. It's a real world example of how ingrained gender bias still is. And Crowder laughing at that, it only proved Maria's point that privilege often goes unnoticed until someone loses it or gains it.
Like just these
Again, that's
day-to-day
not surprising
things.
to me. I mean, I'm sure you can imagine that a lot of those things aren't because they're a man.
You don't think that it's how often do you get yelled at when you walk down the street? Like, "Hey, baby," like, nice ass, like, whatever. Like, how often do you get catcalled when you walk down the
Well,
street?
I don't have a nice ass, so it'd be hard to know.
Well, I
I have a
don't know what
terrible
your
ass.
ass
I have a giant ass. A couple of things. So first off, you're right. I really am not super interested in the anecdotal, but I'll entertain
Yeah.
this discussion for a bit because I do find it interesting.
Sure.
I want to make sure that I'm not misunderstanding, before we move on to this example that you've used, I'm not misunderstanding kind of your position. It seems to me that you are arguing that, because you talked about patriarchy and how it does not benefit, it also is, sorry, my mouth is getting dry, it has negative ramifications for men as well as women. It sounds to me like you're talking about how gender is societal. These pressures to make these decisions, to look a certain way, to act a certain way, to go into certain fields. From what I've been understanding, gender is societal.
Gender is a societal
Okay.
construct.
Okay, good.
Yes, I believe that.
So I ask this because I'm confused. Please explain your views on transgenderism.
Meaning,
If gender is a social construct, how can one be transgender?
I don't believe that there are many biological differences between men and women either. So I don't really understand what you're saying here.
Then what's the point to being transgender? We're talking about because they want to go through biological transitions, talking about hormones, sex change operations. If gender is a social construct, this idea of transgenderism, not transsexualism, you use the word transgender, would have to mean that a male is born into the wrong body, the wrong gender, the wrong brain. And a female is born into a male body. So if gender is a social construct, how can one be transgender? Or how could you possibly support someone trying to conform to the gender constructs as created by society?
I don't necessarily believe that they are born into the wrong body. I think that they are assigned the wrong body at birth. So I think that, a doctor births a baby and he sees that it has a penis. He says, this is a boy, right? That's typically how it goes. It's a boy. It's got a penis.
Yes.
So they are assigned that gender at birth. So transgenderism is identifying with a different gender. And why are we having this discussion again?
When Maria asks how often Crowder gets harassed walking down the street, he jokes about not having a nice ass. But that is the point. He doesn't experience it, which is why he trivializes it. According to a 2021 YouGov poll, 81% of women in the US report being sexually harassed in public. That's not anecdotal. It's a systemic issue that Crowder shrugs off. Then Crowder shifts to transgender issues, asking how someone can be trans if gender is a social construct. But Maria answers clearly. Trans people aren't born in the wrong body. They're assigned a gender at birth based on physical traits that don't always align with identity. It's a distinction Crowder seems more interested in twisting than understanding. What's really going on here is that Maria's framing makes sense. She's speaking from lived experience and backed by social science. Crowder, on the other hand, is stuck in a loop of systemic traps and outdated talking points. Gender norms are constructed, and feminism challenges those norms to make society better for everyone. That's something Crowder never really addresses, because it's easier to mock than to reflect. Maria isn't just defending feminism, she's showing why it still matters.
Because I don't understand how you can go to transgenderism and talk about advantages when you say that gender is a social construct. Transgenderism fails to hold up if gender is a social construct. Gender has to be biological. It has to. You can't take a biological hammer to a societal nail. It doesn't make any sense. Logically, it doesn't make any sense. You can't be born into the wrong gender if gender is a social construct. And that's one thing that I find incredibly ironic, where women talk about, feminists talk about, we're forced to live up to these expectations. We're forced to look a certain way, talk a certain way, act a certain way. And then a man says, I've always felt like I wanted to look, talk, and act that certain way. Really? You look like a real-life Barbie doll because you've had some estrogen replacement therapy. Come on over. We'll accept you as one of our own. Transgender men to women are basically pretending to be every negative stereotype you've talked about presented for women societally.
I actually can't believe that we're having this conversation now, because it is completely bonkers what you are trying to argue with me right now.
Okay.
To say that a person who was assigned the wrong gender at birth and who had a lifetime of gender biases pushed upon them, where they had to, be hypermasculine because they were assigned male at birth, that they had to dress a certain way when they didn't feel like that was the way that they wanted to dress. They felt feminine.
They felt feminine because of societal pressure, which you seek to destroy. So that's a bad thing.
What are you talking about? I'm saying that if a person is assigned male at birth, okay, and they identify as female, they have an entire life of male like gender tropes pushed upon them, but they identify as female. So they're choosing.
But they identify as female. They're identifying with the gender tropes thrust upon females. You understand? Again, it has to be consistent going both ways. I don't identify with the societal pressures of being a male. I identify as female. What do you identify with when it comes to being female? Is it biology?
I don't believe, and we can go into this if you really want to, I don't believe that there are many biological differences between men and women.
Really?
At all. Yes, I do.
Now let's break that down. Crowder claims that if gender is a social construct, trans identities don't make sense, but that completely ignores how social constructs work. Race is a social construct too, and yet racism still exists and harms people daily. The existence of social norms doesn't mean people aren't impacted by them, or that they can't experience dissonance when their identity doesn't align with those norms. Maria rightly points out that trans women grow up with male-coded expectations pushed on them, often forcefully. They aren't pretending to be women. They're rejecting the role society forced on them and choosing to live as they truly are. That's not hypocrisy, it's resilience. Crowder also doubles down on denying biological differences, or really on using biology as a bludgeon to define gender narrowly. But biology is more complex than the binary he clings to. The American Psychological Association and American Medical Association both affirm that gender identity is distinct from biological sex and that affirming trans identities improves mental health outcomes. Maria's argument is powerful because it reflects lived experience, backed by research, not culture war paranoia. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out Ground News in the description down below.